crafty friends, this is Michelle from Fonda Crafts. For this Christmas in July video, I've got one of these Hobby Lobby advent calendars and I want to paint it in a gingerbread style. So I'd love for you to join me. I've got my paint ready to go. So let's get started. This video is part of the Christmas Palooza collaboration hosted by Jody at Southern Seasons, Dawn from Shabby Meets Bling, and Annie from Indiana Jones. Thank you ladies for letting me join this collab. I'll link their channels in the description as well as the playlist so you guys can go check out all the fun Christmas in July videos. So I started off with the drawers of the calendar and I'm using Deco Art Cocoa, but I realized after painting maybe about 10 drawers that I can't buy this paint anymore. It's not available at Hobby Lobby or at Michael's. I believe I had initially bought it at Hobby Lobby. So I decided to change the paint color just to make sure I'd have enough to last me the whole project. So I changed the color to Craft Smart Golden Brown, and I'll show you the difference. This is the cocoa from Deco Art, and it's got just maybe a little bit more of a yellow undertone than the golden brown. That's the top drawer there. So this is the Craft Smart Golden Brown, and I got an 8-ounce container. So I repainted the first drawers in the golden brown. I did leave the knobs of the drawers white, and when I needed to paint in between the houses, I just kind of bent the trees out of the way. I'm going to show you how to make puffy snow. So this is just white acrylic paint, Mod Podge, and some baking soda. And I had gotten this recipe from Nicole at Afraid Not. She's on YouTube and Facebook. So I'm going to mix these in a 1:1:1 ratio. And it's going to make puffy snow or icing if you want to think of this as icing for the gingerbread cookies or gingerbread houses. So I'm just going to mix this very thoroughly until I have just like a thick paint consistency, maybe like a chalk paint consistency. And then I'll add that to the ground of the advent calendar. I had already added the puffy snow to that second level there, possibly even the third level. But I'll show you on the very first level how I did it. I'm using that same plastic palette knife that I used to mix up the mixture, and I'm just kind of scooping it and spreading it onto the ground, and I'm just spreading it and making sure it goes onto the house just to kind of soften the lines of where the house meets the ground. But I also want to make sure to leave a thick enough layer of the puffy snow on the ground so you can't see that bare wood. And as you can see with the little pine trees below, I had put some of that puffy snow on the base of the tree just to cover those up. I also let some of the snow kind of drip off of the edge just to make it look like the icing is kind of dripping down. I'm pretty sure I've used a paintbrush before to apply this puffy snow, but I think the cleanup is just much easier with the palette knife because it does kind of gunk up your paintbrushes. So at this point, I'm about halfway done with this little level, And as you can see, I'm using a hair dryer just on a low setting, and I am blow drying that puffy snow, and what that's causing it to do is puff up. So I think I don't know if it's the hot air, I assume it's the hot air that's making the baking soda in the mixture kind of puff up. So I know it's very hard to see, but in person you can see the snow puff up a little bit. I picked out this candy cane stripe paper from Hobby Lobby as well as the polka dot papers. I'm not sure if I'll use the polka dot papers at this point, but for sure I'll use that candy cane stripe. So I've painted some of the roofs in the gingerbread color and some of them I've left white. And I'm just sizing up the roof. So I'm just making an impression there with my fingers so I know where to cut. And I'm going to decoupage the paper onto the roof. So I'm using Mod Podge, just painting on a thin layer. And I'm placing my paper onto the roof. Just pressing it down nice and secure. For the other side, I had to cut a little divot because there was some glue in the back of the house there, of the roof, that was in the way. So again, I'm just adding Mod Podge and placing my paper on top and gently pressing it down. So there's that first house with the paper, and I'm sealing that paper in with another coat of Mod Podge. I did decide to use the polka dot paper with the green and red dots, so I just used a paper cutter to cut it, and for any excess paper hanging over the side, I just used a little file to score the paper off. I'm using this Tulip brand puff paint to add to the gingerbread houses. I also have these little faux sprinkles. So with that puffy paint, you have to kind of make sure that there's no air in the tip. So I always just kind of bang it upside down just to make sure all the paint is down at the bottom. And I'm just making some little scallop designs on the roof. And I must say that I've used a smaller bottle of that tulip paint, and I think the smaller bottle gives you a more precise design. I think the bigger bottle has maybe like a larger tip on it, so it's not as precise. But anyway, so I just went ahead and I added some of the quote-unquote icing to my gingerbread houses. I just made like little squiggle patterns, and I added the sprinkles. I just used some tweezers. I didn't want to pour it on there and make a big mess, so I'm just kind of adding these, and it's got like little peppermint candies, and then like white, green, and red sprinkles. And those sprinkles I just used on the houses with the gingerbread colored roofs. The roofs with the decoupaged paper, I didn't add the sprinkles to those. Once the puffy snow was completely dry, I decided to add these deco art twinkles onto the icing. It's just like glitter, but in paint form. So I just painted that onto all the puffy snow. And then I moved on to the drawers. I started by writing in the numbers with pencil and then tracing on with this white paint marker. But in the end, I just wrote out the numbers just with the paint marker. I didn't bother with the pencil. So here are all my drawers. And then I had a pack of little wooden gingerbread cutouts from Dollar Tree. So I painted those. And then I used this little scoring tool from Dollar Tree to add eyes. So I'm using just black. I think this is apple barrel black paint. So I'm using that paint to add little eyes. I used a Sharpie to add a little smiling face. And for the cheeks, I used Crafter's Collection in red. That's the paint from Hobby Lobby. So I just made little cheeks with my dotting tool. So there's his little face. This is Deco Art Hauser medium green. And I used that for his buttons. And then this is Deco Art Titanium White. So I just did little dots on his arms and legs just to trim those out. There's the little gingerbread man, and I wanted to glue him up by the house, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be in the way of opening the drawer, so I used Titebond Quick and Thick to add him to the side of the house. I'm just using a toothpick to wipe off the excess glue. So there they are on the top level, and then I glued some more on next to a few of the other houses. I had a few of these tiny little candy canes that I decided to glue onto a couple of the houses. So again, I'm just using Titebond to adhere those candy cane onto the house. So in total, I think I spent maybe like 2 weeks working on the gingerbread advent calendar. Of course, I worked on it on and off, and some days I didn't work on it at all. But I so appreciate you watching. Thank you for taking your time out to join me. And in the end, I'll show you what it looks like lit up. And of course, I had to add in one more little detail to the drawers. I just added some dots in the same paint colors that I used for the gingerbread men. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something new and come back for more crafty ideas. Thank you so much.